And joining me now to discuss the situation further from Detroit, Michigan is Saeed Khan. He's Associate Professor of Near East and Asian Studies and Global Ties at Wayne State University. Sir, thanks so much for joining us. What do we know about why Russia and China, two permanent members, vetoed this U.S.-backed push for a ceasefire? 11 members supported it.
Well, I think we have to take a look at the text of the resolution that the United States put forward. And Russia and China, along with Algeria, voted against, and Guyana abstained from the resolution. And really, it came down to this language that it said that it urges the United Nations to determine the imperative for an immediate and sustained ceasefire. So it wasn't calling for an immediate ceasefire. It was essentially kicking the proverbial can down the road to say that the UN must try to determine if there's an imperative. And that, I think, really struck both Russia and China particularly as a very unfortunate effort made by the United States, a very cynical ploy by the United States, which had offered some kind of hope in the fact that it was initiating and tabling a resolution. But the resolution actually takes things even further back than if they had not probably offered a resolution at all. And I think that the Algerian ambassador to the United Nations, Algeria also voting against, was a very important element to this because in essence, he said that he was representing the entire Arab world. The idea then of trying to bring about an immediate ceasefire without having these kinds of deliberations is absolutely essential. And the fact that the resolution then in many ways makes it contingent upon supposedly diplomacy that the United States is leading or says it's leading in between Hamas and Israel, then means that the UN resolution really wouldn't have much effect anyways.
So with this notion that this can is, being kicked down the road, is a ceasefire now becoming increasingly difficult to achieve? And what does this mean as far as getting desperately needed aid into Gaza? So many innocent Palestinians are suffering.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, here we hear statements from Secretary of State Antony Blinken that the negotiations are underway for a more comprehensive kind of resolution to this. And at least the official U.S. policy is, and certainly through the language of the UN resolution, is that that should take primacy. Any future resolutions that are being tabled, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Dr. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, has said will be vetoed by the United States if it does not have that kind of language which prioritizes the ongoing negotiations. Negotiations with the United States certainly seems to be towing the Israeli line as to what's going on, and hasn't really fully ruled out the possibility, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, of a full-out invasion on Rafah.
And do you believe Netanyahu will make this push into Rafah, where there are almost 1 million Palestinians that are sheltering there? And do you think that becomes then a red line for the U.S. support? Because up until now, the U.S. has said it would protect Israel from any kind of ceasefire, saying that it has a right to defend itself.
Well, President Joe Biden had said that Rafah and any kind of incursion in there is an absolute red line. President Biden also said that he wanted to see the Israeli plan of action on what to do, but didn't necessarily rule out an invasion on Rafah, but was simply looking to see what the Israeli plan was of dealing with the 1.4 million Gazans that are essentially trapped there. It does not seem to be, or one can certainly infer, that the Israelis don't have a very coherent plan on what to do with the Gazans and are willing to go in no matter what. And here I think we have to take the rhetoric coming out of Israel more seriously, both by Prime Minister Netanyahu as well as his spokespeople, to say that Israel is willing to go alone to Rafah, even if the whole world is against it. And it's really going to remain to be seen if Washington and London and other capitals, which have been providing deference to Netanyahu, have been providing support militarily to Netanyahu as well as diplomatically, whether they are going to adhere to their own rhetoric of saying that this is a red line.
Saeed, not much time left, but what kind of pressure is the U.S. under to try and nudge Netanyahu off this precipice, which is Rafah? And how tenuous is the relationship between him and Biden right now? It matters to Biden, obviously, on humanitarian grounds, but also it's impacting his re-election prospects.
Well, most sources now in the United States seem to indicate that while President Biden has been very forthcoming and steadfast in support of Israel, he and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a very tenuous relationship. But Netanyahu also understands domestic politics, and this is an election year. And he realizes that even if need be, both for his own political survival as well as for the interests of Israel, he doesn't mind even splitting what had been a bipartisan approach to Israel. He was invited to speak to the Republican Senate caucus in Washington, but not the Democratic Senate caucus. And so here we see a cleavage happening, which essentially means then that Israel is going to be an election campaign issue. And putting the pressure on Biden, whether he feels as though it's important to risk the Jewish vote as well as the evangelical vote, which tends to be traditionally very much in support of Israel.
We'll have to wait to see what happens next. We will leave it there. Saeed Khan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.